In this lesson, our focus standard comes from Grade 8 Statistics and Probability Standard 3, Use and interpret the equation of a linear model to analyze bivariate data. Our topic for this lesson continues to be from Data and Statistics, Interpreting Trend Line Equations. Our essential question for this lesson is how do we interpret the m and b values of our equation in the context of the data? Please take a moment, as usual, pausing the video if you need to copy the standard, the topic, and essential question into your header, along with today's date. Be sure and set up your question column and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So today we're going to be looking at ice cream sales. And we're asking the question, is there a relationship between the temperature and ice cream sales? Now you might have a few ideas about this as well, but let's take a look at what we have here on our graph. Along the x-axis we have the temperature as it was recorded at noon each day in degrees Celsius. Along the y-axis we have the sales each day at the end of the day. These are in dollars. We have a trend line here and this blue and black line that was created using our first point here, 16,325, meaning when it was 16 degrees Celsius the store did $325 worth in sales. And our second point here, 25,614, again meaning that when it was 25 degrees Celsius outside, they did $614 in sales. So we want to see, is there a relationship? Well, if we were to classify this scatter plot, we have shown a trend line, so that means it's linear. It's increasing as we read it from left to right, so it's positive. And I would go ahead and say that this is a fairly strong correlation. So we have a strong positive linear association. And so now we want to go through the process of writing an equation for this trend line, in which I'm going to review how to use 2 points to do that. And as we go, we will interpret our m value and our b values and talk about what it means in the context of this data regarding ice cream sales. So let's take a closer look. We're going to start off calculating the m value. And that is, and again, we're going to do this from finding the slope from 2 points. So again, here is that equation. Our m value, which is our slope. If you only have 2 data points, then you can use y2 minus y1. That means we're going to take the y value from the second point and find the difference from the y value from point 1. So that'll give us our run. That'll tell us what is the difference between these 2 points. That'll give us our rise, because it is telling us the difference between the height of these 2 points. And then we do x2 minus x1. So when we take our x coordinate 25 and subtract our x coordinate for point 1, 16, that will give us our run. That'll tell us the horizontal difference between those 2 points. Since we're going to have to interpret slope in the context of our story problem, it's helpful to think about what is our y values telling us. And since ice cream sales is along the y-axis, the difference in our y values is going to be the change in our sales. And since the x-axis is representing temperature, finding the difference between the 2 x values is going to give us our change in temperature. So remember, slope is always change in y over change in x, and here I've just added what the y variable and what the x variables represent in this story problem. Now we're ready to just fill in those values. So I took 614, which is the y value from my second point, and I'm subtracting 325, since that is my y value from my first point. And then similarly on the denominator, I took 25 from my second point, which is the x value from my second point, minus 16, which is the x value from my first point, And so by doing this, by finding the difference, we're finding that change. So go ahead and take a moment, see if you can calculate that out. What I would expect to see is 289 over 9, because the difference between 614 and 325 is 289. The difference between 25 and 16 is 9. So for our purposes, it's probably easiest to deal with this in decimal form. So I'm going to go ahead and take 289 and divide it by 9. And that's going to give me 32.11, 32 and 11 hundredths. So it's important to remember what this is again. Okay, so right here I have a little reminder, and please copy this down, that I want you to remember that 32 and 11 hundredths could be written as 32 and 11 hundredths over 1, and the numerator then, which is 32 and 11 hundredths, represents the y variable, and the denominator, which would be 1. Anytime you don't see a denominator, it's always 1, and that denominator is going to represent the x variable. That's going to help us interpret this in the context of the story problem. So, if we're trying to figure out what this means, then I would say that for every 1 degree increase in temperature, because temperature is our denominator, and since there is no denominator, we can always imagine a 1 to be there. For every 1 degree increase in temperature, ice cream sales increase by $32.11, because that would be our numerator value, and our numerator is the change in ice cream sales. So again, this 32 and 11 hundredths is our slope for our equation, and what that is telling us is that for every 1 degree increase in temperature, the ice cream sales increase by $32.11. And that would make sense. The warmer the temperature gets, the more likely people are to buy ice cream. Right? We don't typically go out for ice cream on a really cold day, but if it's a really hot day, we're more likely to do that. And that's what our scatter plot here is telling us. So now that we've calculated slope, and please take a moment to make sure you have this all copied into your notes, we're going to now take a look at finding the y-intercept, and then interpreting that value. Before we do though, I do want to give you a sentence frame that you can use anytime you need to interpret the slope value, and it basically goes like this. For every, and then you enter in the denominator value from your slope calculation, increase or decrease, so we used increase, in the x variable, temperature was our x variable, the y variable, and then you select whether it's increasing or decreasing based on whether or not this is a positive value, by, and then what that slope value is, or what that numerator value is. So, for every denominator and for every blank, which is filled in by the denominator value, will increase or decrease in blank, filling in the x variable, and then the y variable increases or decreases by whatever your numerator value is. So please copy that down as well, and then we will get to finding the y-intercept for our equation. So as a reminder, this is the formula that we learned a few lessons back, that in order to calculate our b value when we only have our 2 points is using b equals y sub 1, meaning the y value from the first coordinate, minus the slope value times the x value from the first point. So you have to have already done your slope calculations and still have 1 point from the data. So here we go. I first just filled in the values from our slope being here. So y1 was $325 in sales, and you can see that because that was our y1 up here when we calculated slope, minus 32.11 cents, that was our m value, times 16, which was our x1 value. So I just am substituting in the values into this equation from the values in this problem. And now I'm following order of operations. So I did 32, we do multiplication first, so I did 32.11 times 16, which is $513.76. So I just filled that in. Now I need to find my B value will equal 325 minus $513.76. And when I do that, I come up with B equals negative $188.76. So again, we want to ask, what does that mean in the interpretation of this of our story problem on ice cream sales? Well, if I have a negative value, right, a negative B value, it's crossing here. When the temperature is 0, sales is going to be negative. Now let's think about what that might mean in business. The temperature is 0. They have a negative sales. Here's how I interpreted it. When the temperature is 0 degrees Celsius, ice cream sales will be negative $188.76. So I'm just stating what this value means. And again, that was our x variable when x is 0, and our y variable and what our y-intercept is. But why would I end up with a negative y-intercept here? Why would my sales be negative when the temperature is 0? So this could be taking into account that if no one comes in to the store because the temperature is freezing, the store is losing money due to the store costs, just keeping the lights on and keeping an employee in there, and making ice cream that no one is there to buy. So it would make sense that the B value would be negative for this trend line. And we take all of this and put it all together into a final equation. We get y equals 32 11/100 x minus 188 76/100. So this concludes our video lesson on interpreting the trend line in the context of the data that it represents. Please take a moment to make sure that your notes are complete and begin writing down study guide questions and a summary summarizing the answers to your study guide questions before moving on and answering the questions in the Google Form document.